Part 30.8 Surah Ar-Rum, the Romans Assalamu Alaikum. Welcome back to Sufi Essence with Hammad Syed. We now transition into the penultimate major thematic segment of Surah Ar-Rum, initiating a penetrating theological and ethical examination of how humanity interacts with the crucial dimension of economic life and divine provision. Having established the eternal, unchanging truth of Tawhid, and delivered an essential warning against the schismatic dangers of sectarianism, the Quran now turns its gaze upon the moral and economic conduct of the individual and the community, specifically addressing the unstable, often contradictory human reactions to the divine distribution of worldly wealth. This highly significant section, encompassing verses 36 through 40, functions as a decisive call for economic and moral justice, demonstrating an intrinsic link between the spiritual disease of shirk and the corrosive social disease of greed and exploitation. It vividly exposes the deep-seated human tendency towards spiritual arrogance and self-aggrandizement during periods of prosperity, and the paralyzing, destructive state of despair during moments of inevitable adversity. Crucially, the verses deliver a powerful, definitive, and dualistic command that establishes the din's economic framework, a fierce, uncompromising rebuke of usury as an act of spiritual and economic theft against the community, juxtaposed with a profound, encouraging command for charity and social contribution Zakāh as an act of genuine, blessed growth and spiritual enrichment. The entire passage culminates in the ultimate, unassailable declaration of Allah's exclusive power over creation, sustenance, life, and death, cementing the believer's absolute existential dependence on Him alone. For the student of ilm, this is an indispensable masterclass in realizing that true spiritual submission is an incomplete ideal unless it translates directly into ethical, just, and profoundly compassionate economic behavior that mirrors the vast generosity of the Creator. The fickle human reaction to divine provision, Kenzo, Iman, Quran, Surah Ar-Rum, the Romans, chapter 30, verse 36. And when we make mankind taste of some mercy, they rejoice thereat. And if an evil befalls them because of what their own hands have sent forth, behold, they despair. This verse provides a devastatingly accurate and timeless psychological analysis of the average human reaction to the natural, inevitable cycles of mercy and adversity, serving as a critical continuation of the theme initiated in verse 33, but focusing intensely on the internal spiritual state. The first part describes the reaction to ease and temporary abundance, and when we make mankind taste of some mercy, they rejoice thereat. Wa, idana, ahin, anasa, ra, matan, fari, b. When Allah grants a share of His mercy ragma, be it sudden health, unexpected wealth, communal peace, or a highly successful harvest, the immediate, unpurified human reaction is often shallow, excessive rejoicing fari. This rejoicing is not rooted in profound gratitude, but is characterized by a dangerous mixture of arrogance, spiritual self-satisfaction, and a sense of entitlement. They frequently forget the ultimate source of the provision, attributing the success to their own skill or effort, and thus fail utterly to show adequate, binding gratitude leading directly to a state of spiritual heedlessness, ghafla, and a misplaced sense of security. The second part describes the dramatic and terrifying shift in reaction when that prosperity is challenged. And if an evil befalls them because of what their own hands have sent forth, behold, they despair. Wa and Tugabam, Sayatan, by Ma Kadamate Yadream, Idenhum Yakna Yun. When an evil saya or affliction strikes, whether it is a personal loss, a business failure, or a communal disaster, and this affliction is often recognized as a direct result of their own preceding errors, injustices, or moral neglect because of what their own hands have sent forth, the same people immediately plunge into profound, total despair, yakna'un. This deep spiritual pessimism, this hopeless resignation, is more than mere sadness. It is a form of spiritual shirk, as it reflects a complete lack of hope, Rajbi, in Allah's boundless power, His capacity for forgiveness, and His infinite mercy. They view their situation as irreversible and outside of divine control, effectively limiting the Creator's power. The true believer, fortified by ilm and Tawhid, remains humbly grateful in prosperity and resiliently patient in adversity. The spiritually superficial person, however, oscillates wildly and destructively between arrogant elation and hopeless resignation. This fundamental instability is the primary sign of an unpurified heart, lacking the necessary steadfastness, istikma, of true and mature Tawhid. Conzalaman Quran, Surah Ar-Rum, the Romans. Chapter 30, verse 37. Do they not see that Allah extends the provision for whom He wills and restrains it? Verily, in that are indeed signs for a people who believe. This verse confronts and decisively challenges the short-sighted, self-centered, and psychologically unstable view of economic and existential fluctuations detailed in the previous verse. The question is posed as a severe intellectual challenge demanding contemplation. Do they not see that Allah extends the provision for whom He wills and restrains it? Awa, lam yaro ana aha, yabsuko, ariska, liman yashbu, wa yakdor. The choice of verbs is crucial. Extends yabsuka means to spread out, increase, or widen the provision to a person or community, while restrains yakdor means to measure out, limit, narrow, or restrict the provision with profound precision. This dual, comprehensive, absolute power over provision rizq is stated as being entirely and exclusively according to Allah's sovereign will, liman yashbu. The constant, seemingly random changes in wealth, power, and circumstance, the very cycles that cause people to foolishly rejoice or fall into despair, are not the result of blind, random chance or solely the outcome of human effort, but are deliberate, orchestrated acts of divine design and trial. Allah extends provision to test for gratitude, generosity, and the proper use of resources, and He restrains it to test for patience, trust, tawakkul, and sincerity. The one who sees this truth, who grasps the wisdom behind the fluctuation intellectually and spiritually, will not fall into arrogance when rich or despair when poor, recognizing both states as essential opportunities for deeper submission and richer servitude. The verse concludes by identifying the sole audience capable of achieving this profound, balanced insight. Verily, in that are indeed signs for a people who believe inna efdan lika, layitin, likomen, yumin. Only those who possess genuine belief emin can truly internalize the signs jite in economic and existential cycles. Understanding them as part of a larger, flawlessly wise, and ultimately benevolent plan, thereby maintaining their emotional, ethical, and spiritual equilibrium. Solomon, Quran, Surah Ar-Rum, the Romans, chapter 30. Verse 38. So give to the near of kin his right, and to the needy and the traveler. That is better for those who desire the pleasure of Allah, and it is they who will prosper. Image. Following the exposure of the spiritual instability caused by selfish individualism, the Quran immediately commands the practical, tangible antidote: charity, social justice, and compassion. This verse establishes the fundamental, non-negotiable principles of the social economy of Islam and the proper, ethical distribution of wealth. The command is explicit and direct. So give to the near of kin his right, and to the needy and the traveler fakit. Galkur, wa al miskana, wa ibna, as sable. The wealth provided by Allah is not conceived of as absolute private property. A designated portion of it is divinely established as the right akar of others. The priority is systematically given to the near of kin dh al-kurb, highlighting the primary inescapable responsibility one has to their immediate family, relatives, and extended social network, securing the closest bonds of kinship gilat aragm. This is followed by the needy al-miskan, those permanently or severely deprived, and the traveler ibna, as sable, who is temporarily stranded and cut off from their own resources. The verse then elevates the act of giving by explaining the supreme spiritual motivation required, that is better for those who desire the pleasure of Allah dunlika, kairan lil ladna, yurdrina wahahal. The immense, unparalleled value of the act of sharing is realized and purified only when the motivation is exclusively the seeking of Allah's pleasure, waiha, all, not human praise, social recognition, or the expectation of worldly return. The reward promised for this purified intention is not merely social stability, but ultimate, eternal prosperity, and it is they who will prosper. Wa'ul, ika humu, all-muffly, unmuffly, omufly unmuffly. Eternal success, salvation, eternal success, salvation, and well-being in the hereafter. the greatest form of spiritual and moral fulfillment. Thus, the willingness to share and acknowledge the rights of others is the practical, undeniable expression of Tawhid applied to the economy, representing a profound act of fan annihilation of the ego's avarice, which leads to the lasting Baka subsistence with the Creator. Kanzal, Iman, Quran, Surah Ar-Rum, the Romans, chapter 30, verse 39. And whatsoever you give is usury, so that it may increase in the wealth of the people. It increases not with Allah. Whatsoever you give is Zakāh, desiring the pleasure of Allah. It is they who will get manifold increase. This verse delivers one of the most powerful and insightful economic and spiritual critiques in the Quran, presenting a stark, absolute metaphysical dichotomy between the two opposing forces in human economics: the destructive principle of usury and the generative principle of charity. The first part addresses usury or interest rib, and whatsoever you give is usury, so that it may increase in the wealth of the people. It increases not with Allah, wa ma taitum, min riban, li yarbora, f amli, in yasai, fa la yarber, inda all. The inherent intention and mechanism of rib is to achieve a parasitic, compulsory increase, Urabua, in one's own wealth at the direct expense of others, effectively consuming the poor person's livelihood and concentrating capital unjustly. Allah decisively declares that this increase, though appearing mathematically sound and large in the accounts of the worldly life, has no spiritual, moral, or ultimate value in the divine accounting. It increases not with Allah. The wealth gained through rib is spiritually sterile, morally toxic, and carries the heavy, destructive burden of manifest injustice, ultimately leading to communal ruin. The second part presents the glorious, pure, and blessed alternative: and whatsoever you give is Zakāh, desiring the pleasure of Allah. It is they who will get manifold increase. Watatum min zaktin turderna wiha ohe owe ika humu amu ifan beef. The act of giving Zakāh, obligatory charity, or Qadaka in general, is done with the sole, purified intention of seeking Allah's pleasure. Wiha, all. Unlike the false, parasitic increase of rib, the wealth given in Zakāh is promised a magnificent, manifold increase, al-mud ifan, by Allah. This is a profound metaphysical truth. By diminishing one's physical wealth for the sake of Allah, spiritual wealth, the blessing barakah, the purification, and the ultimate reward in the hereafter are increased exponentially. Zakāh is thus a form of purifying the soul and the remaining wealth itself, transforming transient matter into eternal spiritual currency. The verse teaches that true, sustainable, and blessed economic growth comes not from exploitation, but from sharing, compassion, and the deep recognition of shared community rights. Kanzal Iman, Quran, Surah Ar-Rum, the Romans, chapter 30, verse 40. Allah is He who created you, then provided you sustenance, then will cause you to die, then will bring you back to life. Is there any of your partners who can do any of these things? Holy is He, and far exalted is He from their association of partners. The final verse of this section serves as a majestic, comprehensive, and ultimately final conclusion to the entire argument against shirk and the folly of human dependency on created, transient things. It presents an irrefutable, fourfold declaration of Allah's exclusive and unique power over existence, directly addressing the source of all provision and life. Creation: Allah is He who created you, Allahu, Alad Kalakami. This foundational reminder immediately establishes humanity's humble, dependent origin and their debt to the Creator. Sustenance. Then provided you sustenance, thumma razaqakum. This reminds humanity that the very wealth and provision they are being tested with, and which causes them to despair or rejoice, comes entirely from Him alone and is not self-generated. Death then will cause you to die, thumma yamkukum. This reminds them of the temporary, vulnerable nature of their existence and the absolute finality of their material life. Resurrection. Then will bring you back to life, thumma yukakum. This is the final, ultimate declaration of accountability, cementing the truth of the hereafter by linking the initial creation to the final return. The verse then delivers the ultimate, devastating, rhetorical challenge to the polytheists and the heedless. Is there any of your partners who can do any of these things? Hal min shurak ikaman yafalu mindan likam min shay? The answer is unequivocally and self-evidently negative. no idol, no saint, no self-proclaimed power, no king, and no financial system possesses the least ability to initiate creation, sustain life, cause death, or resurrect. Since the partners have zero power over the fundamental, essential processes of existence, their worship and reliance are rendered utterly irrational and futile. The passage closes with a glorious, necessary declaration of Allah's perfect transcendence. Holy is He, and far exalted is He from their association of partners. Subhana wa ta'ala am yushrikin. This is the absolute victory of Tawhid over shirk, confirming that the Creator is utterly beyond the feeble, contradictory limits, and the flawed, limited concepts that human beings attempt to assign to His magnificent and unique reality. Hadith. The verses in this section deliver a profound command for zakah and charity. Chapter 30, verses 38 to 39, emphasizing that genuine wealth lies in giving and in seeking the pleasure of Allah all. B. The Prophet, peace be upon him, frequently taught that the ultimate purpose of life is not the accumulation of transient wealth, but the attainment of spiritual contentment through ethical actions. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, taught. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Wealth is not in having many possessions. Rather, true wealth is contentment in the soul." Sahih al-Bukhari 6446, the Book of Cox, Softening of the Heart. This immensely important hadith provides the spiritual anchor and the most critical prophetic commentary on the themes of rejoicing, despair, and provision found in this section 303-637. The verses describe the spiritually immature person who is tossed between elation in prosperity and despair in adversity, because their sense of wealth is tied entirely to possessions al-ara, which are temporary and external. The Prophet, peace be upon him, completely redefines the concept of gin, wealth, sufficiency. He teaches that true wealth is contentment in the soul, al-gin, and nafs. This internal state of contentment, gin and nafs, is the spiritual shield that prevents the paralyzing despair, yakna, verse 36, and allows the believer to recognize the profound signs in the extension and restraint of provision, verse 37. When one's soul is content, the giving of zakah, verse 39, becomes easy, natural, and joyful, because one's happiness is not contingent upon the physical volume of wealth, but upon the spiritual purity of the intention and the act. This contentment is the highest form of ilm applied to the economic and personal life. Let us now supplicate, drawing from the profound lessons of these verses, asking Allah to grant us a deeper understanding and to guide our every step. O Allah, Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, grant us the steadfastness as stigma to neither fall into self-serving arrogance when you make us taste of your mercy, or to descend into utter despair when affliction strikes, for we know both are from your profound and wise decree. Open our eyes, O Lord, to the profound signs in the way you extend the provision for whom you will, and restrain it, so that our hearts remain firmly anchored in belief, eman, and tawakkul, trust during all cycles of our material existence. Inspire us to meticulously fulfill the right kak of the near of kin, the needy, and the traveler, making our only motivation the sincere desire for your pleasure. Why? So that we may be among those who truly prosper eternally. Protect us from the spiritual sterility and injustice of usury, and make our giving of zakah pure, abundant, and full of barakah, so that our good deeds may increase manifold with you, and our souls may be purified from the corrosive disease of greed. We affirm that you alone created us, sustained us, caused us to die, and will bring us back to life. And we declare you far exalted and holy from all the false concepts and limitations that the wrongdoers associate with your magnificent and unique reality. A handsome British Muslim with beard, wearing black Sufi essence baseball cap, praying wide-open hands in the foreground, integrated into this scene. May Allah illuminate your heart and mind with the light of this divine ilm. May He make your channel a beacon of guidance for all who seek spiritual clarity and truth. May your efforts be a source of immense reward, and may you be granted the highest stations of paradise. May the peace and blessings of Allah always be upon you and your loved ones. May He grant you unwavering steadfastness on the path of truth, and may your work be a testament to His magnificent names, Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. Amin.